let's say that somebody was coming into our church and they're black, and would they be eligible for membership in our church? Yes, they of course they would. They'd be eligible for membership in our church. But would they be permitted to participate in, embody, and practice what I would call black culture generally in our church? The answer is absolutely not. Why? Because the characteristics that mark black culture as a generalization, in the same way Paul's talking about Cretans on Crete, they are evil, murderous, violent, bestial people. They steal, they kill, they destroy. They look like Satan in how they act. They are sinful to the core. They have besetting sins that are like fatherlessness, sexual immorality. They molest children at a high rate. All of any criminal statistic that you could look at, almost pretty much without exception, they excel at them. Black culture. So when we make this generalization, one of the purposes of it, one of the points of utility for it, is for black people who do not embody that culture to repudiate it, hate it, and also for policymakers to make the kind of political movements and in terms of law and order that would usher in the change over time of that culture. One of them would be something like, I tweeted about this, the law of Moses in Deuteronomy 21 concerning a rebellious child. If 5 to 6% of black, I think it's something like 5% of black males are murderers. Think about that?
Yeah, 5% of young Africans are committing the bulk of the murders.
So if you had 100 black men in a room, even just, I think specifically, if you had 100 black men in a room, 5 of them would have committed murder, which is a lot, quite a few.
Well, as Matt Walsh pointed out, the actual number of blacks who are committing murder is more than whites. Right. And whites are significantly greater.
60% compared to 13% of
percentage of the population. Yeah.
So if you take that, and then you took a law like Deuteronomy 21, which is a just law that God enacted through Moses. The law was that if you had a rebellious son, you have a child they're coming up into their manhood and they're rebellious, they don't listen. He lists some characteristics, and even though they're disciplined, they will not turn. He says the fathers to bring them out into the town square. This is a rebellious son, and then they stone him to death. They kill him.
And an armed robber would certainly be one of those.
Oh, absolutely. Armed robber, all the ghetto culture.
Violent crimes.
Basically, take ghetto culture, it would describe this to a T. If you did that over 3 generations, how much violent crime would you have in the 3rd and 4th generation? Much, much less. What we've done instead is we've actually, with unjust weights and measures, we have wildly penalized whites for even virtuous acts in lawfare. And we have done everything because liberals have appointed blacks to positions of power, and they're practicing ethnic and racial in-group preference. Like the several black women who were involved in releasing DeCarlos, the murderer in the Charlotte.
I think 14
times.
Yeah, something like that.
His younger brother was a murderer in prison. His father was a violent criminal. Okay, so there's 2 sons and a father. If they'd cut that line off back the generation or 2 before, there's no DeCarlos to slit the throat. But what we have instead are, and in this case, the double whammy of black female judges, politicians who have appointed these sorts of people.
The mayor of Charlotte, for example.
The mayor of Charlotte. Like if you look at who appointed the judge and the judge that released him, it's 2 black women. Okay. And what did they do? They said, oh, it's mental health, it's homelessness, it's this, it's that. It's not a criminal tendency of black males that needs to be cut off through the wielding of the sword by the civil magistrate.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachah Kodash. I also would like to give double honors to our apostles and our bishops and our elders of Great Millstone that do rule well through the Holy Spirit. And I want to say peace, blessings, and salutations, of course, that are unto you elect, who are scattered through the 4 winds of this earth, fulfilling your lots in all truth and all sincerity. I'm the brother Sha'ar from the Great Millstone Dallas branch, coming to you all again with another lesson, which is inspired by the Holy Spirit. And Lord's will, this lesson here will be edifying unto the flock. Hey, what I want to touch up on here briefly is going to be based on a few videos that I watched on our chat earlier today. And this ultimately is going to be circled around, the right-wing conservatives, Christianity. All right. And how as of lately they have been pushing their disdainment toward black culture. All right. And even though, and you've heard us speak on it and you will continually hear us speak on it until the nukes drop. All right. How black culture is wicked and it promotes degeneracy. And it's definitely true. All right. But the difference of us talking about it versus when you hear, like you heard that video clip of that Edomite pastor, Brian Suave, and his rhetoric. All right. Y'all heard him go into how he pretty much, would like pretty much YNs and ultimately black culture to be put to death. And he's trying to use Deuteronomy, I believe it was Deuteronomy, the 21st chapter, going into, the law of killing a rebellious child. And this is the one instant, all right, where you'll like to hear a so-called Christian delve into the law. All right. But when it comes to the rest of the prophecies pertaining to the nation of Esau, Edom, and their demise, and ultimately the prophecies, and even, who the chosen seed is, which is spoken of very, what's the word that I'm looking for? Very, very heavily. I mean, it's all over the scriptures, but when it comes to Israel and Israel being redeemed and such, you read a lot more of that in the Old Testament. And when you read it and understand it through the lens of the Old Testament, it makes you understand what the New Testament is talking about more. But nevertheless, you don't really hear too many Christians go into the Old Testament, especially the law. All right. Only when it's regarding money, paying tithes and such. But again, just on this clip that you all see here. All right. He's trying to go to that law in Deuteronomy 20 to justify pretty much killing so-called black people. And this is really the mind that the average right-wing Edomite, thinks. This is the mind of the average right-wing. That's a tongue twister. Excuse me. That's the mind of the average right-wing Edomite. All right. And I work around a lot of these people too. I see it on their face. I hear it within their conversation. And these people are ready. All right. And going back into what I was saying earlier before I started talking about this guy, Brian Suave, which, I'm going to talk about, just going to go into this mindset. But ultimately, the thing about us, when we go into the degeneracy of black culture and such, we bring out both sides. All right. As it's written in Isaiah, the 58th chapter, we have been commanded to cry aloud and spare not, to lift up our voice like a trumpet and show our people Jacob their transgressions, in the house of Jacob their sins. Okay. And we've been commanded to do that. But when you listen to the Edomite, the right-wing conservative Edomite, and their rhetoric on black culture, and they like to throw out numbers, which I'm going to go into that as well, because ultimately, this is going to, I believe, this is going to play a role, all right, in a lot of Edomites mowing down Jake. And again, you're already seeing a lot of it right now, especially with these whole riots taking place in Chicago. A lot of them are right-wing Edomites. They're Maggars, all right, and a lot of these are Maggars that are enlisting in ICE. All right. But ultimately, us versus them, we get on both sides as we've been commanded to. But you notice a pattern when you listen to the so-called white man, the conservative Edomites view, all right, on black culture and such. And they only speak on that one view, but they refuse to bring out their own degeneracy within their own people. And I did a lesson about this a few weeks ago, close to about a month ago, going into how that inflated number of the 13% does majority of the crimes is a lie. And I actually went into the actual stats in my lesson the day before Charlie Kirk actually got murked, got assassinated in the hands of another Edomite. Okay. But ultimately, just to land on my plane, I'm going to start bringing some precepts and talk about this, but what I want to go into, all right, is, you have these right-wing Edomites claiming to defend biblical values. But when you look at the way they explain it, it sounds like the spirit that Esau would be in these last days. And it is the spirit Esau is in here in these last days. All right. The hatred towards Jake, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right. The only thing is now they're trying to align it. All right. They're trying to use the category that they placed us in, all right, and align it politically on why we deserve less and why we deserve to ultimately be mowed down. And again, you heard this Edomite's description and how he explained it. And he tried to be all politically correct, and he tried to use precepts, which the precept that he was alluding to, all right, didn't even have anything to do with the example that he was trying to use, because that precept that he was alluding to, all right, is ultimately putting evil away from Israel. And more so to specify on that is when you have a rebellious child. All right. So again, that just goes to show you the mind of the Edomite, because they're pretty much saying, all right, man, you know, our kids is bucking up. All right. So we got to do something about it. All right. And again, you know, it goes into that hatred that Edom ultimately had. And I actually got this here in Genesis 27, just to go into this prophecy, because as you see Esau, Edom here within the spirit, all right, that's just doing nothing but shining a light, all right, on this prophecy on how Esau feels about Jacob. Okay, so this is the book of Genesis, chapter 27, and I'm going to jump straight to it in verse 41. And this is after Jacob received the birthright. All right. And it reads in Genesis 27 and 41, and Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father is blessed him. So they can disguise it. These Edomites, these so-called right-wing conservatives, these Christian conservatives, they can cover it up with, oh, well, they're terrorizing the community. They're terrorizing America. All right. But when it comes to an Edomite shooting up the school, all right, or assassinating one of their heroes, Charlie Kirk, all right, they don't speak too much of it. They blow over it. All right. And again, it goes into ultimately it's really their spirit that's crying out for blood. All right. They can only use something tangible and put a number behind it. And again, they're blowing up the numbers, which again, we know. And like I stated earlier, we preach it and we say it all the time, how much of a nuisance and how degenerate our people are and why the Lord is going to ultimately mow them down. All right. But also, too, we understand why our people are in this state. And it's because of the product of the curses and us being around the actual heathen. All right. The reason why our people act like this, too, is because we have been surrounded by the heathen. OK. And when you look at Jake right now, and as much as these Edomites might like to make the complaint about how much of a nuisance we are, how much we do all the crimes, and that goes into, again, that categorization that I want to go into as well, because they pretty much gave our people this plight. All right. You know, we never had the ability in a mass sense to go over to these different continents where these drugs are actually created. All right. Or I'd rather say where the ingredients of these drugs are actually grown. All right. It ain't us that's going to these different continents. Now you got like, you know, Frank Lucas and a few different examples. All right. But all in a nutshell, we never had the capability in a larger scale to go to these different areas. All right. And get these different ingredients to make these drugs or get all these different guns. OK, it's people that's in positions of power that have the ability to do that. And once they do that and get us all the drugs, get us all the guns and lay it into a so-called black and Latino and Native American neighborhood. All right. The same thing with alcohol. You know what I'm saying? What they gave to Gad. OK, but ultimately they give us these things and we eventually destroy ourselves, which again is property of the curses. And I'm not using this excuse to justify anything, because again, we understand ultimately that this ties to the curses. But Esau is trying to act like they had nothing to do with this. They trying to play the victim here and put their hands back and hands in their pockets and act like they didn't have anything to do with this. All right. And I'm going to finish this verse up and I want to jump to that Revelation 12 because I did have it held. But this is back in Genesis 27 and 41, because this is going into ultimately why the Edomite feels the way that they do. All right. And it says Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith he blessed wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said unto his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand, because, you know, Isaac was old at this time, who fathered both Jacob and Esau. All right. And eventually Isaac died, and Esau was saying, I'm going to mourn for my father, but eventually after my mourning, I'm going to have vengeance on my brother Jacob. So it says the days of mourning for my father are at hand. then will I slay my brother Jacob. All right. So what you see right now with the average mind of the mind of the average so-called white man, when you look at it all the way to when we was in slavery to right now, where that Maggar spirit is rebirthed. And the Maggar spirit really is that Edomite Christianity slavery mindset. All right. And it's just rebirthed in day and age, which is why they get a hard on when they want to start to talk about numbers and on Jake's degeneracy. All right, their eyes start getting big and they start to. You saw that Edomite, he tried to go into the law and tried to use the law to justify it. No, dang well, they don't go into the law for anything. But when it comes to killing Jacob and trying to justify killing Jacob, they went to some type of stat, all right, which is an overinflated stat, and they went into the law. All right. And again, pertaining to the stats, I'm going to bring this up here in Revelation, the 12th chapter, because it tells you here that the devil would be doing this here. Because when you read it in Job 9:24, it tells you that the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. So as we have understanding on that, we know he has power to even overinflate stats. You know, this same devil has the power to control the narrative here on the earth. All right. And as he's had power to control the narrative, all right, you have people. All right. And again, ultimately this goes into us being a byword, a proverb, or reproach. All right. So this is more proof. Why were the Israelites? All right. It definitely ties into this persecution that people like Vocab Malone and other so-called Christians don't want to acknowledge. But in the same breath, they'll acknowledge Netanyahu's bullshit. All right. And try to justify his madmanness. All right. And I want to talk about that in a minute as well. But I'm going to read this in Revelation 12:10. Because it says, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is salvation come. And when you read this whole chapter in Revelation, the 12th chapter, all right, it gives you a backdrop, all right, from the start of us being in captivity under the Roman Empire where Yahushua was birthed out of, all the way into the end of this known world. And it goes into toward the end, all right, this same dragon, all right, which America, the American Edomite, is an extension of the Roman Edomite back in the ancient world, all right, but how this same dragon was ultimately going to want to have war against the saints. And you see here, when you listen to how they speak, all right, they're trying to use the scriptures to justify themselves, all right, and like Netanyahu, how he tries to use the scriptures to justify genocide. When you point a finger out to these people and how off they are, they're ready to fight you, all right, and that just goes to show you who has the power in the earth right now. And it's the same ones that you can't talk about. So this is back in Revelation 12:10. All right, I just wanted to give that brief backdrop on Revelation 12 pertaining to, Edomite supremacy here in these last days, Romanized Edomite supremacy, which again, America is the latter end of the ancient Roman Empire. It's the rebirthed latter end of the Roman Empire. Okay. But Revelation 12:10 says, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation. All right. So in order to be saved, we have to be delivered from the hands of our oppressors. Because you got so-called Christians that'll scream how much they're saved and such. All right. When they can't even acknowledge the tribulation that they're going through. Now, when it comes with our gospel and our doctrine, we acknowledge the plight that we've been experiencing. All right. We acknowledge that we've constantly went into captivity and such, constantly was persecuted. So we being a people are looking for salvation because we've been going through it for so long, even though a lot of the hurt and pain that we've experienced is self-inflicted because we've rebelled and went off. But we've been in this sinful flesh, or we've been programmed to go off, and we're looking to be saved. We're looking for everlasting salvation. We're looking for a new body, and we understand the only way to truly receive that is through Yahushua physically coming down and delivering us from the hands of our oppressors, according to the prophecies. And these are the same oppressors that have the power to categorize you, that have the power to place the narrative on the earth that we're these heinous people. All right. That same people that have the power to give us the same plight and want to complain about the product of what they've given us. And again, it's all to categorize us so they can eventually come down against us. All right. And the scriptures talks about that. So this is back in Revelation 12:10. And it says, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation. All right. So we're clearly not saved right now. For these people that love to scream, I'm saved, I'm saved. We're not saved right now. All right. Even according to Jeremiah with Salaki, I'll go on and get that really quick. This is Jeremiah 8. And what I'm about to read, this is exactly what we're experiencing still as a nation of people here today. And when these videos that you've seen in the beginning, and I'm going to get on that coon Jake as well, because you got a lot of coon, all right, right-wing Jakes as well, that's helping to further push Edomite supremacy. Okay. And they're going to play a hand, all right, in Jake being captured. Okay. But this is Jeremiah 8 and 18. And it says, 17. It says, for behold, I will send serpents, cockatrices amongst you, which will not be charmed, and they shall bite you, saith the Lord. And ultimately, this verse here is a similitude of the Lord sending enemy nations against us to place us in captivity. All right. And when you read the beginning of this chapter here, it's going into, well, even a few verses prior, it's going into how eventually the Lord sent the Babylonians to come out and smoke out the Israelites and eventually place us in captivity. And he's likening those troops, those military individuals, those Babylonians, which Edomites are the modern day Babylonians now. But in this verse, he likens them to serpents, all right, and a cockatrice, which is a very venomous serpent, all right. And it says they're not going to be able to be charmed. So, you're not going to be able to sway them and woo them to change their mind because, we being Jacob are ultimately supplanters. So we have the ability to charm and to sway. And that's what's been given unto us by the Lord. That just comes with our spirit. But what this verse is saying is, these people are going to come with a certain spirit where you're not going to be able to sway them. They're not going to be able to be moved. All right. They're going to come with one mission at hand. And again, when you look at these right-wing conservative Edomites, they with the smoke right now. All right. They definitely with the smoke. Now you got ICE agents that's getting ready to hem up the Southern Kingdom. And they've already been taking people of color, not even looking at their IDs and just taking them and questioning them and such. This is what we have to look forward to within the near future, Jake. They're in a whole nother spirit right now, because before they could lie and tell you that they were the last Mohican and the last nigga on earth. That's an inside joke. But now, people are calling them out. The so-called small hat is being called out, and the average Edomite is being called out by the heathen. So now they can't lie about who they are and their backs against the wall. So now they just going to just straight up come with blood. Verse 18, it says, and when I would comfort myself against sorrow, my heart is faint within me. Behold, the voice of the cry of the daughter of my people, because of them that dwell in a far country. Is not the Lord in Zion? Is not her king in her? Why have they provoked me to anger with their graven images and with their strange vanities? And this is a heavy verse here, because just as I stated in the beginning of this lesson, how, we're justified in getting on our people. All right, by their graven images, their vanities. This is ultimately why the Lord is going to come against them. All right. So this has been our stance since the beginning of time. This was Jeremiah's stance. All right. And just because Jeremiah got on Jake, don't mean that Jeremiah didn't get on Esau. He got on both. And the thing about it is, when Jake went off, the Lord would use the heathen to subdue and mow Jake down. So what we're looking at, as you heard that video in the beginning of it, you hear the perspective on the Edomites saying why they must do this, even though it's wicked, but it's a spirit that's been given unto them by the Lord to try to use those verses and such to try to justify it. All right. When lo and behold, as I stated earlier, they're programmed to not look at, the atrocities that they've committed and such, because they're so hell bent on Jake. Like I said earlier, it's like they got a hard on when it comes to speaking on our degeneracy. Oh, that 13%, they make up 13% of the crimes. It's like they just love to say it. It comes out so eloquently and fluently. All right. But again, they've been given the power to overinflate these numbers. Okay. And they're getting, again, they're using this as justification to come against us, which again is why our people ain't saved. And that leads to the next verse here in verse 20. The harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. All right. So here he clearly said we're not saved, especially since he knew what was getting ready to come down the pipe. And if our own people, the so-called Negro, Latino, and the Native Americans, they have they head so shoved so far in the dirt, all right, then they would understand that as well. But the Lord has bugged them out. So now they getting ready to be hit with the right-sided haymaker, because these same Jakes that screaming they're saved and such are the same ones that are of the left. They're the same ones that promote Jake degeneracy. They're the same ones that push bullshit. So these Edomites, when they come with their sword, it's getting ready to hit a lot of these Jakes where it hurts. And these are the same Jakes that are looking for a rapture. Oh, by the way, they were supposed to have their last rapture yesterday. All right. And it didn't happen. And I ain't heard shit yet, because it's the 7th now. All right. But anyway, it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks, because you got Israelites walking around like they're saved already. Okay. When the enemy ain't even came up against them. But now he getting ready to come up against them. And now he's doing it. And this leads me back into that Revelation 12 and 10. And it reads, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our power and the power of his anointed. All right. So it's saying now has come salvation. For all these people that's saying, we're already saved. Well, I'm saved by the blood of Jesus. No, you ain't. Salvation ain't come yet. This verse, when you read it, is saying now has come salvation. After what? It says, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuse them for the Most High day and night. So salvation is going to come after the accuser of our brethren is casted down. And as we always go into this verse, and I know you brothers and you sisters might be tired of hearing this breakdown, but it's on my spirit to bring it out again. All right, because when you go into the word accuser here in this verse, you have the word categoreo in the Greek.
Strong's G 2723. Categorically. Categorically.
Okay. And when you go into this word accuser, it says to accuse before a judge or to make an accusation. All right. It says of an extrajudicial accusation. There was a point, and it looked like they took it out. But there was a point when it would say to categorize. All right. That's where you get the word categoreo from. But it's looking like the blue letter. Let's see. But you clearly see them. They're making an accusation against us, and they're trying to go to the law to justify it, as you heard in the beginning. All right. So there was a point of time when it would actually mean to categorize as well. Okay. But they're trying to, use justification to put numbers behind it. 13% doing all the crimes. It's only 13% of the people. They're performing all these crimes. We got to kill them. We got to lock them up. We got to do something about them. Just as you heard that Edomite say. All right. And you even have wicked Jake that walk with this same stance. All right. You got dark-skinned people that walk with this same stance. Okay. And they're walking thinking that, they're going to be hunky-dory in that day. The scriptures calls it Jacob's trouble for a reason. All right. And even when you go into this word accused here in Revelation 12 and 10, it's the word categoros. All right. Which, it says an accuser or a name given to the devil by the rabbis. All right. So what this verse is pretty much saying is, the devil, who is a so-called white man, the Edomite, according to the Bible, all right, is going to pretty much have a complaint against us. And within that complaint, they're going to come down against us. Even as you read in verse 12, it says that they're going to come down having great wrath because they know that they have but a short time. All right. So as you simultaneously hear randomly about this, AI Atlas and all these chariot sightings and the war against, Americans, coming into these major cities, fighting against crime, ICE raiding. These are all prophecies, man. Yahushua talked about this in Matthew the 24th chapter. Yahushua talked about this. All right. Now, I did want to briefly speak upon this as well, because, as I stated earlier, there's wicked Jake, all right, our own people. And there's always been wicked Israelites that sided with the heathen. All right. But their outcome is going to be worms and soil as well. Now, I'm going to pull up a video real quick that was just sent earlier. All right. Because, again, touching up on the whole this right wing Edomite, this conservative Christianity bullshit. All right. And they're siding hand in hand with the heathen. Now, well, they are the heathen, excuse me. The Edomites are of the heathen, but I'd rather say they're siding hand in hand with Amalek. All right. And as much as they speak up, against the degeneracy of Jake, they speak up against this whole left, woke, androgynistic way of living. But when it comes to speaking out against the small hat, they do not do that. And the small hats promote this. Within their Talmud that they read, they promote degenerate acts toward children. All right. Hell, they got a parade that they hold every year in Tel Aviv where they promote homosexuality and wickedness. All right. And these same right-wing conservatives that are tired of the degeneracy that's being done on the left and Jake being the face of it, when it comes to Amalek actually performing these same things, they don't do anything, but they speak up for it and they defend it. All right, and what you're getting ready to see right now is a sellout Jake. I don't know his first name. It's his page is the Officer Tatum. All right, and he's a conservative Christian. All right, and again, a lot of these people think that they're getting ready to ride away in the sunset. All right, when this accusation comes, or not even the accusation is here. He's part of the accusation. All right, but more so when they mow down, when the accusers come down. All right, people like this ain't gonna just walk away scotch-free. All right, and I got Second Ezra pulled up as well going into that, but these people are not gonna walk away scotch-free. Excuse me. Okay. Matter of fact, I'm gonna read this real quick. Then I'm gonna play that video. Second Ezra 15:15 says, "For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up to fight against another, and swords in their hands." So these people are ready, and they're trying to use Jake's degeneracy as justification on why they want to do this, and that's just one example. All right. Again, Jacob's trouble is a massive prophecy that's getting ready to come to pass, and we're gonna be in it according to the verse. Let's go on and play this.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, welcome to the show. Thank you
Salakia.
for coming on. I know that you.
There we go.
First of all, very few number of Christians in Gaza because Hamas is a tyranny. It's a terrorist tyranny that wants to not only murder all the Jews, but it doesn't accept Christianity. It doesn't accept other faiths. It doesn't even accept other persuasions of Islam that they deem are heritage. So it's not good to be a Christian in Gaza. Now, as far as the church you're talking about, that was an unfortunate accident. There are things that happen in war, and they're not intentional.
I know that was a little hard to hear. Hopefully y'all could hear it. That's why I stopped it. It was a short anyway. But ultimately, the point of me showing this video was how when it comes to what the actual small hats doing and the way that they think and just their overall reputation on the earth. All right. You have this right-wing conservative Jake, again, Officer Tatum. When you listen to some of his content, he's a Maggar. All right. He's a Maggar as well, and they just wink at it when it comes to why Netanyahu was justifying doing what he was doing. And he's trying to say, well, they don't have any churches over there in Palestine. They do that. We in Gaza, there's no churches. We actually acknowledge Christianity in Israel. You hear this craziness? And it's all confusion. Because again, we understand, but in Christianity, we know the verse said in Romans, I believe it's in Romans 16, it says, love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. All right. Now we understand who our neighbor is. And our neighbor is a fellow Israelite brother that's in the truth. That is our neighbor. But a so-called Christian will acknowledge everybody there being their neighbor. Love thy neighbor as thyself. They'll acknowledge everybody being their neighbor. But this so-called right-wing conservative Christian heard Netanyahu talking about justifying what he's doing over there and didn't bat an eye, but had a whole 30-40 minute conversation with this devil. All right. And these are the same Jakes that also use this same 13% rhetoric. All right. And these are the same ones that eventually will have no problem within selling us out. All right. And the scriptures talks about that. And I can leave it off here in Revelation 2nd Ezra 16. I mean, there's a few other verses that I had, but ultimately the point was made because the Lord is going to get sellout Jake as well. Sellout Jakes that know that their Israelites play a part in this 2nd Ezra 16. All right. And sellout Jakes that are so-called Christians and part of this movement are going to play a part in this as well. And this verse here is saying they're not going to get away neither. All right. But this is 2nd Ezra 16 and 68. And it says, for behold, the burning wrath of a great multitude is kindled over you, and they shall take away certain of you and feed you, being idle with things offered unto idols. So this is going into pretty much how eventually there's going to be a multitude of people that's going to come up against us, as the scriptures calls it, Jacob's trouble. Verse 69, and they that consent unto them shall be had in derision and in reproach and trodden underfoot. And again, you have our own people that are consenting with their idea. They're consenting, all right, with what they're doing and what they're saying. And this verse is saying they're going to be trodden underfoot as well. They're not going to get away with this. All right. It's called Jacob's trouble. So Jacob is going to be in trouble. And if you ain't of the elect, you through. All right. So I kind of wanted to touch up on this here briefly. All right. But again, like I wanted to talk about it. You see, Edomites, ultimately in a nutshell, Edomites are expressing their hatred toward Jacob, their brother, and they're masking it and disguising it with conservative Christianity. All right. They're masking it and disguising it, with Maggar, making America great again. All right. That's ultimately what they're doing. Again, they're trying to use the scriptures to justify it, even as you read it. Matter of fact, I can end it here in Psalms 51, actually. I'm sorry, not Psalms 51. Hold on. I think Psalms 50. This is Psalms 50 and 16. But unto the wicked, the Most High saith, what is thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth? Because again, the thing about it is, when you're speaking up against wickedness, you got to speak up against all wickedness according to the scriptures. All right. Or else you have blood on your hands, and the blood of that person and the wickedness that they've done is going to be upon you. So you got these right-wing maggers out here that's trying to use the scriptures to justify why they want to kill Jake. All right. But, according to the laws and the statutes, you're supposed to speak out against all wickedness and not one side of it. All right. Or else that blood is upon you. So again, the scripture says it. What is thou to do to declare my statutes? All right. You took the covenant into your mouth, and now you're going to be held accountable for the stuff that you ain't been able to keep. All right. And one thing that we're going to see, which we obviously know, but when I say we, I'd rather, talking about everybody that's out here. These people are going to see that these so-called Christians like Vocab and all of them, they're going to be shocked when they don't get raptured. All right. Because as they wanted to put the covenant in their mouth, they veered off far in other areas and such, and they haven't judged the right. So hopefully this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem and Kakodash, double honors to our apostles and bishops and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessing and salutations to you elect, fulfilling your lots in all truth and all sincerity. Shalom.